The transport ship dropped them at the edge of Kepler 442c's atmosphere, with enough supplies for 2 weeks and a promise to return for extraction on schedule. As their landing pod descended through the dense, greenish atmosphere, Marcus got his first real look at the planet that had defeated an entire research team. It was breathtakingly beautiful and utterly alien. Vast forests of towering plants in shades of blue and purple stretched to the horizon, broken by crystalline formations that caught and reflected the system's twin suns. Rivers of what appeared to be silver liquid wound between the strange trees, and the entire landscape seemed to pulse with a subtle, rhythmic movement. "The biodiversity readings are incredible," Marcus said, monitoring their descent on the pod sensors. "I'm detecting over 3,000 distinct life forms within our landing zone alone, and 17 of them are tracking our descent," Zarethak added grimly. She had taken position at the pod's tactical station, her enhanced senses already working to assess threats. "Flying creatures coordinating their flight patterns to follow us? Are they showing aggressive behavior?" "Not yet, but they are demonstrating intelligence and coordination. That should not be possible for unrelated species." The pod touched down in a clearing roughly 2 kilometers from the abandoned Omega-7 research station. Through the viewports, Marcus could see the facility in the distance, a cluster of modular buildings and sensor arrays that looked intact but eerily empty. "Atmospheric analysis confirms it's safe for both our species to breathe," Marcus reported. "Gravity is 1.2 Earth standard, which should be comfortable for you and manageable for me. External sensor sweeps show no immediate threats within 50 meters of our landing zone," Zarethak added. "But that could change rapidly if the ecosystem perceives us as hostile." They spent several minutes running through final checks before opening the pod. Marcus had traded his standard civilian clothing for lightweight tactical gear that Zarethak had selected for him. It felt strange and restrictive, but he trusted her expertise in survival equipment. "Remember," Zarethak said as they prepared to disembark, "move deliberately, not aggressively. Avoid sudden gestures. If I signal for you to stop or take cover, do it immediately without question." "Understood." Marcus shouldered his environmental analysis pack loaded with sensors and sampling equipment. "And remember what I told you about the biochemical communication system. If you notice any coordinated behavior changes in the local fauna, let me know immediately. It could indicate we're interfering with their network." "Acknowledged." Zarethak checked her weapons one final time, then activated the pod's exit sequence. The first thing Marcus noticed as they stepped outside was the sound. The entire forest was humming, not with insect activity, but with something deeper and more complex. It reminded him of electrical equipment, a subtle harmonic vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Do you hear that?" he asked. "Yes, it was not mentioned in any of the research reports." Zarethak's head turned as she scanned their surroundings. "It has rhythm pattern." Marcus activated his audio analysis equipment, recording the ambient sound. "It's definitely artificial, or at least not naturally occurring in any ecosystem I know. The frequency is too regular, too organized." They began moving toward the research station, Marcus taking readings with his environmental sensors while Zarethak maintained a protective perimeter around him. The local fauna watched them with obvious intelligence, bird-like creatures with too many eyes, small mammals that moved in perfect synchronization, even plants that seemed to track their movement. "They're not hostile," Marcus observed. "Curious, maybe, but not aggressive." "Yet," Zarethak corrected. "But you are right. This is not the behavior described in the evacuation reports. Those accounts spoke of immediate, overwhelming aggression. Maybe whatever was causing the problem has changed since then." Marcus stopped to examine a cluster of the silver-leaved plants that dominated the area. "These are fascinating. Look at the root structure." Zarethak moved closer, maintaining her watch on their surroundings while glancing at Marcus's readings. "Explain what I am seeing." "These aren't individual plants," Marcus said excitedly. "They're all connected underground. Look at the biochemical readings. They're sharing nutrients, Information, even electrical impulses across the entire network? A single organism pretending to be many? More like many organisms that have evolved to function as one. It's like... Marcus paused, searching for an analogy Zarethek would understand. Like a hunting pack, but with plants. Each individual specializes in different functions, but they coordinate their actions for the benefit of the whole. And the humming sound? Marcus consulted his equipment. Communication. They're literally talking to each other through subsonic vibrations transmitted through the root network and atmospheric resonance. He looked up at her with growing excitement. Zarethek, this entire ecosystem is one massive communication network. Every species is connected. That would make it incredibly sensitive to disruption, Zarethek observed. Exactly. Marcus began walking again, taking readings as they moved. If something interfered with their communication system, it would be like... He struggled for another analogy. Like someone jamming all radio frequencies during a coordinated hunt. Chaos and confusion, leading to desperate, uncoordinated attacks on anything perceived as the source of the interference. Zarethek finished. The research station. They reached the perimeter of Omega 7 20 minutes later. The facility looked undamaged from the outside, but Marcus's sensors immediately detected anomalies. There, he said, pointing to a tall communications array at the center of the complex. That's our problem. The communications equipment? Look at the frequency analysis. Marcus showed Zarethek his readings. The station's quantum communication array is operating on almost exactly the same frequency as the ecosystem's natural communication network. It's creating interference patterns that would scramble biological signals across the entire region. So, the ecosystem attacked the station because it was disrupting their ability to communicate. Zarethek said. Right. And the longer the station operated, the worse the interference became, leading to increasingly desperate and aggressive behavior from local species. Marcus studied the readouts. But here's the interesting part. The array is still active, but it's no longer interfering significantly. Why not? Marcus pointed to damage on several of the array's components. Because the ecosystem found a solution. Look at these scorch marks, these precisely cut cables. The local species didn't just attack randomly, they surgically disabled specific components of the array to reduce the interference while leaving the basic structure intact. Zarethek studied the damage, patterned with her hunter's eye for detail. This required intelligence and planning. They identified the source of their problem and eliminated it with surgical precision. Exactly. Which means this ecosystem isn't just connected, it's intelligent. The entire planetary biosphere is essentially a single, vast intelligence. And we just dropped into the middle of it, Zarethek observed. Why has it not attacked us? Marcus looked around at the watching fauna, then at his environmental readings. Because we're not interfering with their communication. Our equipment is designed to monitor, not transmit. We're not jamming their network. Then our mission should be simple. We recommend that future research stations use communication protocols that do not interfere with local biological frequencies. It should be that simple, Marcus agreed. But I think there's more to this. Explain. Marcus activated his analysis equipment and began a comprehensive scan of the station. Look at these readings. The quantum array was damaged, yes, but it wasn't destroyed. The local intelligence deliberately left most of it functional. Why would they do that? Because they're curious about us, Marcus realized. Think about it. This is a planetary intelligence that's existed in isolation for millennia. Then humans show up with advanced technology. Even though our equipment was interfering with their communication, they recognized it as a form of intelligence trying to communicate. You believe they want to establish contact? I think they've been trying to establish contact all along. The attacks on the research station weren't meant to drive humans away permanently. They were meant to get our attention and force us to solve the interference problem so real communication could begin. Zarethek was quiet for several minutes, processing this. That would explain why the Galactic Council sent our specific partnership. How so? Most species would approach this as either a scientific problem requiring pure research, or a security problem requiring force. But this situation requires both analytical thinking and the ability to understand predator-prey dynamics, territorial behavior, and defensive strategies. Marcus felt pieces clicking together in his mind, and it requires species capable of rapid adaptation and creative problem-solving. Most galactic species are highly specialized, but humans are generalists and Catharians are adaptable hunters. We're both used to thinking outside our standard approaches. The planetary intelligence needed to work with species that could understand both the technical and behavioral aspects of the situation, Zarathak continued, and who could adapt their own methods to communicate with. The assignment arrived exactly as promised, transmitted to both their quarters simultaneously at 0800 station time. Marcus read through it 3 times, certain he must be missing something important. Survey and assess the abandoned research station on Kepler 442c for potential reclamation. Station Omega 7 was evacuated 18 months ago due to hostile environmental conditions and aggressive local fauna. Determine feasibility of reestablishment and recommend necessary modifications for successful reoccupation. It was exactly the kind of assignment that made no sense for either of their skill sets. Too dangerous for a typical research mission, too technical for a standard security operation. Marcus was still puzzling over it when his door chimed. "Enter," he called, and Zarathak stalked into his quarters. She looked even more formidable in the confined space, her presence seeming to fill the entire room. "You have read the assignment," she said. "It wasn't a question." "I have. I'm not sure what to make of it." "It is a suicide mission disguised as a survey operation," Zarathak replied bluntly. "They are sending us somewhere that proved too dangerous for an entire research team, with instructions to assess whether it can be made safe again. Maybe it's not as bad as it sounds. Environmental conditions can change. What was dangerous 18 months ago might be manageable now?" Zarathak fixed him with a look that suggested she thought he was being naive. "I accessed the original mission files. Omega 7 was evacuated because the local ecosystem began exhibiting unprecedented aggressive behavior toward the research station. Plants that had been benign for months suddenly started producing toxic spores. Animals that had previously avoided the area began coordinated attacks on the facility. The environmental scientists could not explain why." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "Coordinated attacks? By local fauna?" "According to the reports, yes." Creatures that had never been observed working together began hunting in organized packs, targeting specific vulnerabilities in the station's defenses. The research team barely escaped. "That doesn't make ecological sense," Marcus said, his engineer's mind immediately trying to find logical explanations. "Sudden behavioral changes like that usually indicate some kind of environmental stressor or contamination. Did they test for pollutants? Electromagnetic interference? Changes in atmospheric composition?" The reports mentioned standard environmental monitoring, but they were evacuated before completing a full analysis. Zarathak paused, studying Marcus's expression. "You think like a problem solver." "It's what I do. When an ecosystem goes haywire like that, there's usually an identifiable cause. Find the cause, address it, and the symptoms should resolve." Marcus pulled up a holographic display showing Kepler 442c's planetary data. "Look at this. The planet's been stable for thousands of years. 3 research stations operated there successfully before Omega 7. Something changed. And I doubt it was natural evolution. So you believe we can simply identify this mysterious cause and solve the problem?" There was skepticism in Zarathak's voice, but also something that might have been interest. "Maybe, but we'll need to get to the station first. And from your description, that won't be easy." Marcus looked at her thoughtfully. "The original research team was evacuated by emergency transport. They didn't have time to properly investigate or defend themselves. But what if we approach it differently?" "Explain." "You're a hunter. You understand predator behavior, territorial responses, threat assessment. I understand ecosystems and environmental systems. The original team was all scientists, researchers, not people trained for hostile situations. Zarithak's eyes narrowed in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as her thinking expression. You propose to combine analytical investigation with defensive capabilities. Exactly. You keep us alive while I figure out what went wrong with the ecosystem. Your hunting experience could help us understand the behavioral patterns, while my engineering background helps us identify the environmental triggers. It is not completely illogical, Zarethak admitted. But you still assume we can simply solve this problem and declare the planet safe for reoccupation. That's the assignment, isn't it? The assignment is to assess feasibility and recommend modifications, Zarethak corrected. Perhaps our recommendation will be that the station cannot be safely re-established. Marcus found himself shaking his head. I don't think that's why we were sent there. Why else? Think about it. Why would the Galactic Council send a human-Catharian partnership to investigate a failed research station? There are dozens of species better equipped for dangerous planetary surveys. But they chose us specifically. Marcus pulled up their personnel files side by side. Look at our specializations. You're an expert in hostile environment survival and predator behavior. I'm an expert in ecosystem restoration and environmental engineering. What if the problem at Omega 7 requires both skill sets to solve? Zarethak was quiet for several minutes, studying the data. When she spoke again, her tone was thoughtful rather than dismissive. You believe the Council's algorithm selected us, specifically for this mission. I think the algorithm saw something about this assignment that required our particular combination of skills. Marcus felt excitement, building as the pieces began to fit together. Maybe that's why our compatibility rating was so low for normal metrics, but why we were still paired. We're not meant to be compatible in the usual sense. We're meant to be complementary. Complementary, Zarethak repeated. One fills the gaps in the other's capabilities. Right. You know how to survive in hostile environments and defend against aggressive fauna. I know how to analyze environmental systems and design solutions for ecological problems. Together, we might be able to do something neither of us could manage alone. Zarethak stood and began pacing around Marcus's quarters, a restless energy in her movements. The original research team failed because they approached the problem as purely scientific. They tried to study and document the changes without accounting for the immediate physical threat. And a typical security team would fail because they would focus on neutralizing threats without addressing the underlying environmental causes, Marcus added. They might clear the area temporarily, but if the root cause isn't fixed, the problems would just come back. So we need both approaches simultaneously. Zarethak stopped pacing and looked directly at Marcus. I protect us from immediate threats while you identify and correct the environmental problems causing those threats. Exactly. Marcus felt a surge of optimism. It's starting to make sense, isn't it? Why we were paired, why we got this assignment. It makes tactical sense, Zarethak agreed. But there are still significant challenges. You have no experience in hostile environment operations. I have no experience in technical analysis. Then we'll have to teach each other. Marcus stood up, meeting her gaze. You show me how to survive in a dangerous environment, and I'll show you how environmental systems work. We have a week to prepare. You would trust me to train you in survival techniques? There was something unreadable in Zarethak's expression. Do I have a choice? You're the expert in hostile environment survival. If I want to be useful on this mission, I need to learn from you. And you would share your technical knowledge with me? Of course. If we're going to work as a team, we both need to understand what we're dealing with. Marcus paused. Is that unusual? Sharing knowledge across species? It is uncommon, Zarethak admitted. Most partnerships in the initiative involve each species contributing their specialized skills independently. Direct knowledge transfer is rare. Maybe that's another reason we were paired. Humans tend to be pretty good at adapting and learning new skills quickly. It's kind of our thing in the galaxy. We're generalists rather than specialists. And Catharians are excellent teachers, though we rarely work with species we consider less capable. Zarathek's tone suggested she was reassessing that assumption. So we're both going to be operating outside our comfort zones, Marcus said. Maybe that's the point. They spent the rest of the day reviewing everything available about Kepler 442c and the Omega-7 incident. The planet was a near-Earth analog with slightly higher gravity and a denser atmosphere, but within human tolerance ranges. The evacuated research station had been studying the planet's unique ecosystem, specifically how multiple unrelated species had evolved symbiotic relationships across the entire planetary biosphere. Look at this, Marcus said, highlighting a section of the ecological survey data. The whole planet basically functions as one massive interconnected ecosystem. Plants, animals, microorganisms, they're all linked in ways that shouldn't be possible on a planet this young. Define linked, Zarathek said. Biochemical communication. Shared resource distribution. Coordinated responses to environmental changes. Marcus pulled up a complex diagram showing species interactions. It's like the entire biosphere evolved as a single organism. That would explain the coordinated defensive behavior, Zarathek observed. If the ecosystem perceived the research station as a threat, all species would respond together. But why would they suddenly perceive it as a threat? The station operated safely for months. Marcus frowned at the data. Unless something changed about the station itself. What kind of change? I don't know yet. But if the ecosystem is Marcus Chen stared at the holographic display floating before him, his stomach sinking as he read the assignment for the third time. Around him, the massive orientation hall buzzed with excited chatter from thousands of other humans, all celebrating their perfect matches in the Galactic Partnership Initiative. Sarah Williams paired with Zenithan Diplomatic Corps member Veltar, announced the cheerful automated voice. Compatibility rating 97.8%, optimal for interspecies cultural exchange. Sarah, a linguistics professor from Earth's Europa colony, beamed as she shook hands with her new partner. A tall, graceful being with silver skin and kind, large eyes. They were already deep in conversation about ancient Earth languages. David Rodriguez paired with Alterian tech specialist Quindos, the voice continued. Compatibility rating 98.2%, optimal for technological advancement initiatives. David, a quantum engineer, was practically bouncing with excitement as his partner, a crystalline being that seemed to shimmer with its own light, began projecting complex mathematical equations into the air between them. Marcus looked down at his own assignment again. The text seemed to mock him with its stark simplicity. Marcus Chun paired with Catharian hunter Zarathek. Compatibility rating 12.3%. Assignment confirmed despite low compatibility score 12.3%. Marcus had heard whispers that anything below 50% was considered a failed match, requiring reassignment. The lowest successful pairing anyone had heard of was 73%. But somehow, the Galactic Council's supposedly infallible matching algorithm had stuck him with someone at barely over 10% compatibility. That has to be a mistake, muttered Jennifer, another human from his transport ship. She was a xenobiologist who had scored 94% with her Verdanian research partner. I mean, they spent 6 months analyzing our psychological profiles, our skills, our deepest personality traits. The system doesn't make mistakes like that. Marcus wished he could agree, but the evidence was right there, floating in front of him. He glanced around the hall, noting how perfectly matched everyone else seemed. The Galactic Partnership Initiative had been humanity's golden ticket into the broader galactic community. After first contact 5 years ago, it became clear that humans were late to a very crowded party. Most species had been part of the Galactic Council for centuries. Some for millennia. The Council had established the Partnership Initiative as a way for newcomer species to integrate. Each human would be paired with a member of an established galactic species for a 2-year program. The pairs would work together on various projects, learning about each other's cultures, capabilities, and ways of thinking. It was diplomacy, education, and cultural exchange all rolled into one. The matching process was supposedly flawless. The Council's AI systems analyzed everything about each participant, their personality, their skills, their goals, their psychological makeup, even their biological compatibility for working in different environments. The resulting partnerships were said to bring out the best in both species involved. Marcus Chung, please report to Platform 47 for partner introduction. The automated voice announced. Marcus took a deep breath and made his way through the crowd. Platform 47 was in the far corner of the hall, away from the celebration and cheerful conversations happening everywhere else. As he approached, he could see why. Standing on the platform was quite possibly the most intimidating being Marcus had ever encountered. Zarathuk stood nearly 7 feet tall, her powerful frame covered in what looked like natural armor plating in shades of deep red and black. Her face was angular and sharp, with predatory yellow eyes that seemed to track every movement in the hall. She had 4 arms, each ending in hands that bore retractable claws, currently extended about an inch from her fingertips. 2 curved horns protruded from her skull, and her mouth revealed sharp teeth when she grimaced at Marcus's approach. She wore minimal clothing, just tactical gear that allowed for maximum movement while providing strategic protection. Various weapons were strapped to her body, including what appeared to be some kind of energy rifle across her back. "You are the human," she said as Marcus stepped onto the platform. Her voice was deep and carried a slight growl. It wasn't a question. "Marcus Chun," he said, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting gesture. "Nice to meet you, Zarathuk." She looked at his outstretched hand as if it might be a trap, then back at his face. "I am told we are to be ... partners." She pronounced the word like it tasted unpleasant. "That's what the assignment says." Marcus tried to keep his voice steady and friendly, despite his nerves. "Though I have to admit, I'm not sure why the matching system paired us. Our compatibility rating is pretty low." "Low?" Zarathuk's eyes narrowed. "What number?" 12.3%. For a moment, Zarathuk's intimidating expression faltered, replaced by what Marcus could only interpret as shock. Then her face darkened further. "This is an insult," she growled. "I am Zarathuk, daughter of Mordek, hunter of the Crimson Peaks. I have tracked and taken down prey across 17 worlds. I have survived the Trial of Fangs, the blood hunt of Cathara Prime, and the void stalking of the Nebula Rim, and they pair me with ... She gestured at Marcus with obvious disdain. "A human," Marcus finished. "A soft, weak, prey species human," she corrected. "No offense intended to your person, but your species is known throughout the galaxy for your fragility. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced senses. You cannot even see properly in low light conditions. What possible use could you be to a hunter?" Marcus felt his cheeks burn, but he tried to keep his voice level. "Maybe that's exactly why we were paired. Maybe the system thinks we could learn something from each other." Zarathuk snorted, a sound that somehow managed to be both derisive and threatening. "What could I possibly learn from a creature that would be easy prey on any world in the galaxy?" The comment stung, particularly because Marcus knew it wasn't entirely wrong. Humans were physically unremarkable compared to most galactic species. They had no natural weapons, no enhanced senses, no particular physical advantages. In a galaxy full of species that could see in multiple spectrums, lift enormous weights, or survive in environments that would kill a human in seconds, humanity often felt like the weakest link. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But the system matched us for a reason. Maybe we should try to figure out what that is." "The system made an error," Zarathuk declared. "I will request reassignment." "You can try," said a new voice. They both turned to see a tall, elegant being approaching their platform. It was clearly from one of the council species, with the distinctive flowing robes and neural interface crown that marked it as an official administrator. "I am Counselor Veleneth of the Integration Board. I could not help but overhear your conversation." "Counselor," Zarathuk said, offering a slight bow that Marcus assumed was respectful. There has clearly been an error in the matching process. I request immediate reassignment. I am afraid that is not possible, Velenith replied smoothly. The matching algorithm has analyzed over 14 million variables for each participant. The pairing you see is the result of calculations beyond even our full understanding. There are no errors. But 12.3% compatibility, Marcus started. Is the compatibility score for obvious surface-level traits? Velenith interrupted. The algorithm operates on far deeper levels than simple personality matching. Sometimes, the most important compatibilities are not apparent until the partnership develops. Zarethek's claws extended fully, a clear sign of agitation. You expect me to waste 2 years with a being who cannot even defend himself, let alone assist in any meaningful hunt? I expect you both to honor the commitment your species made when joining the partnership initiative, Velenith replied firmly. The program has a success rate of over 99% in creating beneficial partnerships. We have never had a pairing that did not ultimately prove valuable to both participants. There is a first time for everything, Zarethek muttered. Velenith's expression remained serene. Your first assignment will be transmitted to your quarters this evening. You will have 1 week to prepare before departure. I suggest you use that time to get to know each other. With that, the counselor glided away, leaving Marcus and Zarethek alone on their platform. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Around the hall, other human-alien pairs were still chatting excitedly, some already making plans for their future projects. Marcus envied them their obvious compatibility. Look, he said finally, I know this isn't what either of us expected. But we're stuck together for the next 2 years. Maybe we could at least try to make the best of it? Zarethek studied him for a long moment. What are your skills, human Marcus? I'm an environmental engineer, Marcus replied. I specialize in ecosystem restoration and terraforming support systems. I've worked on 3 colony worlds, helping establish sustainable biosphere. You build things, Zarethek said flatly. Among other things, yes. I destroy things, she replied. I track prey, I hunt, I kill. I survive in hostile environments through strength and cunning. You survive through technology and cooperation. She shook her head. We are opposites in every way that matters. Marcus was beginning to wonder if she was right. Maybe this really just a massive error in the system? What kind of assignments do who?